Hi everyone, it's Raina. I came up with this idea for a series on three neurotic traits of every sign. And I think it's interesting because being neurotic just means um, things that people do that maybe are irrational, that they work against a person's best interests, but they can't seem to help doing that. Challenging traits, you could say, in some ways. And when I think about that word or that noun, neurosis, I think about it's almost like minor um, quirks of a psychological nature that a person has. I mean, we're not talking about major issues, but even as minor issues, a lot of times I think that the person's ego is really impacting how they experience things and they suffer as a result. So, um, this is going to be three neurotic traits that Aries can reveal. Number one, before I even begin, I want to say that I really believe that Aries and even Taurus, as the first two signs in the zodiac, tend to be very, what you see is what you get. And so there is a certain authenticity that I notice with both of those signs. And I think it is because they are the first two signs that this is the case, because it's like Aries represents the infancy stage, and Taurus probably the toddler stage. I mean, just these early childlike phases, and also the springtime, which is this time of like the blossoms beginning, and there's just this fresh feeling. It's not like weighed down with the weight of the world and the heaviness. There's like kind of a lightness. So with Aries being the first sign, Aries is a cardinal fire sign. And the fire signs, which are also Leo and Sagittarius, they represent the self so much, the individual, in other words, and the creative self expression. So, Aries people tend to be very independent, and that's, a great quality. But the number one thing that I want to point out in terms of neurotic behavior is this sense of having a chip on their shoulder. It's also important to note that this is not going to be true of every Aries sun person. I should label it also the moon, because I think that can also um, show up that way. And of course, I could even say the rising sign too, but I'm just going to say the sun and the moon, I think. But this is more when an Aries person is imbalanced in some way, meaning that some Aries people may have an afflicted sun, or an afflicted moon, so like squares or oppositions to the moon or the sun, which creates more tension within the personality, and makes some of the more negative or challenging traits come to the forefront. But anyway, if we forget about astrology and just talk about the person's life, if they have had a lot of trauma, if they've had a lot of frustration in life, they may feel like the world is against them. And usually Aries people are can't have a very can-do spirit, are very brave, are very self-motivated, and not whiners. They tend to, like, because of their cardinal signs, they tend to take action and stuff like that. But you might have a Sun in Aries person who has personal planets in Pisces. Could very easily happen, or the moon could be in Pisces very easily. And they may be more, or the moon in Cancer, and they may be more tentative. They may be more, um, they may be less confident, less, they may be more timid and more insecure. And when you get an insecure Aries or Leo in particular, watch out because they do have very strong egos. And when they don't feel confident, they tend to overcompensate. And how an Aries person does this is through aggression. So, this chip on the shoulder that I'm referring to is this tendency to kind of go through life always feeling it, not like Pisces, like the victim per se, but if you are an Aries and you have Mars in Pisces, Mars is your ruler. If you have Mars in Pisces, then you may identify more as the victim, but that's not what I'm talking about. It's more that you feel like thwarted. You feel like something is blocking you from being able to experience success. And Aries is a very ambitious sign. If Aries cannot find success, they tend to feel very frustrated, and that can, easily lead to like being, having a short fuse, but also being very quick to take offense. And because Aries is like ruled by Mars, that sense of immediacy, which you will see, especially with the moon in Aries, is very reactive. The person can be emotionally reactive. And that can lead to its own problems where you might burn bridges by having having your anger flare up a little bit too easily. Other people may be a little bit apprehensive. So that's one way that I consider that a form of neurosis. And it's funny because normally I think of somebody who's neurotic as, being really like um, timid, perhaps, but that's not necessarily true. A person who's aggressive can be neurotic as well, as far as I'm concerned. Um, and I could have labeled this 3 self-defeating patterns too. Maybe that would have been a better way of putting it. The number 2 way that Aries people express neurotic tendencies is through thinking that life is war or a fight, that they have to, like a battle. And the reason that this can be some sort of distortion is because, well, first of all, some people are coming from environments where it might have felt like that. If the person came from a neighborhood that was gang infested and there was always like violence, or maybe an actual war zone environment, or maybe the household was filled with a lot of fighting, it can be very easy for a person to kind of apply that to life itself, is that they have to fight for everything that they get in life. So that can lead to aggressive behavior as well. Remember that the first thing that I said was talking about having a chip on one's shoulder because the person feels like somehow they're being thwarted. Well, this is kind of in a similar vein, but it's coming from this idea of the battle. And, Aries can be the warrior spirit. So it might be something almost that they want to see life as. And the problem with that is that um, it's almost like creating drama. That's the problem, is that if something is kind of calm, you may feel like it's boring. And this is one of the things that you have to really examine within yourself. Do you have a tendency to, especially if you grew up with a lot of conflict in your own home life, do you tend to see relationships that are full of peace as being boring? Or individuals who, you are romantically interested in, who are very calm, do you find them dull? Do you find individuals who are very drama filled, crazy? I mean, like unpredictable, doing wild things. Do you find them exciting? Um, this can appear to be more interesting or whatever you want to call it, stimulating, but it can lead to its own hell because you could end up with someone who is really problematic, and it can drain your energy to be dealing with somebody who might be actually mentally unbalanced, and they are um, creating all this drama, which is a distraction for your life, but it's also an upheaval. As you get older, you will likely mellow out to the point where you don't need that. It might be when you're younger that this can be more of a faulty kind of attitude that you, over time, realize doesn't serve you. And number three, having to be number one. Um, Aries is the first sign, so it's the first house. So it's understandable that Aries would naturally gravitate towards any situation where they can um, be in that top slot. Now, unlike Leo, which is simply, yeah, the three fire signs, I mean, the fire energy, you could say, is very ambitious. As a sun in Sagittarius myself, I don't see Sag as competitive as Aries and Leo. I think that Aries probably beats all of them in terms of competitive spirit. Uh, Also because Aries is a cardinal sign, and there is that strong desire to take action in life. Now, with Aries, with Leo, well, I was going to say with Leo, the idea of having the center of attention is really what Leo wants to be. Leo wants to be on center stage, but that's primarily because Leo is a natural performer, uh, somebody who is very gregarious in that sense and very creative. With Aries, there is a warrior spirit, so it is that classic, competitive nature that we see in sports, for instance. And you know, Aries people can love sports because of that. And I the interesting thing about that is my own personal feelings of competition when I have gone to see games, just young people competing in their school and their, let's say basketball, whatever. I always, or even if I used to watch sports, professional sports, I always felt bad for the person who messed up, even if it was an opposing team, because, I can like, oh man, that person must feel terrible. I don't like competition, but Aries people love competition. And I think that that is something that you have to walk. It's a very like fine line because there might be such a thing as healthy competition if you can be a good loser. But I'm afraid that Aries is the type of person, if they play checkers, that they would just flip over the board if they lost. Like, I don't think Aries tend to be good losers because you're so intent on winning and you want to be number one. And this is to me a neurotic tendency because um, it means that the Aries person is telling themselves something about what it means to win, winning at all costs. Now, I will say that Aries is a sign that I believe is quite ethical as far as signs go and as far as what Aries stands for. So I'm not saying that Aries would win at all costs in terms of cheating, but I do think that sometimes Aries people, when they are not feeling secure, if they are insecure, that they may tend to steamroll over others in order to get ahead. And that again is going back to that aggression and misusing this power that Aries can have and that they can wield in a positive way. Primarily, I think through being courageous as well as being, having like unlimited energy that can be applied in a positive way, and that person can achieve a lot, let's say professionally, because they are hardworking and they're ambitious and they're confident. So you have all three of those things. But when you have an Aries person who doesn't feel confident, but they're still ambitious, that's, that's when they can use these so-called markers like being the top, you know, person in the class, having the top grade point average, or being this or that as ways to prove to themselves that they really are okay. That's when it gets tricky and that's when it can get toxic. So, being able to really analyze what is it, why do I need to be number one? Why is that my most, why can't I just improve my personal best and compete against myself? Why do I need to compete against someone else to feel good about myself? And I do believe that there are Aries people that just love um, competition and they can be good losers. They're not necessarily sore losers, but there is a healthy ego with Aries that can kind of make that more challenging, more difficult, but it is possible. But I'm just talking about the imbalanced Aries people. And by the way, when I say imbalanced, it might just be a stage in the person's life where, let's say, an Aries person gets divorced and their partner was the one who asked for the divorce. It might be a blow to their ego that that person, fell in love with someone else and it made them question themselves and feel unwanted, and they were vulnerable for a period of time. And that's when they started to notice that they were more aggressive and controlling. But that doesn't mean that that is going to carry through for the rest of the person's life. It might just be that season where they were feeling not so good about themselves. So, anyway, I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you would like a private reading, the link is below. Take care. Bye.